Good morning. Sunday morning, about 7:30. What I'd like to do is give you a rundown of the last 10 days. 10 days ago, I left my mother in the lounge chair in the back porch. I come back 5 minutes later and she's unconscious on the floor on the porch. Call my neighbor to help me get her back up in the lounge chair, and I call 911. Well, because hospice was on the case, you're not allowed to call for emergency help. Now, I didn't know if this was the last death wrongs of my mother or what, so I figured, well, I'll call 911 because even if hospice already told me that they thought she'd recovered enough that they were going to drop her at the end of the following week anyway. So I thought, well, let me put her in the hospital, and then through Medicare, I'll get 21 days of what do I want to say? Uh, I'll get 21 days when we can put her in a nursing home on Medicare, and follow that up with I have the most expensive plan on AARP Plan F, where she can get 120 days after those 21 days in a nursing home paid for. So that would be 141 days, and in a nursing home, I didn't think there was any way that any more time would be used than that or be essential. So what happened was I follow the ambulance down. I take them my power of attorney and my mother's living will. Now, before I'll even let them do anything to my mother, I make sure that they make copies of it and attach it to her clipboard. So I wait about an hour and then come home. The following morning, I call in to find out what room she's in. They said that she had caused a disturbance in the emergency room. Well, how that's possible for the 93-year-old woman, I don't know, but uh, anything was possible with my mother that stage in the game. So she went in the hospital, and they asked her if she wanted to take some tests. Now, I wanted her to have a CAT scan, and they asked about a carotid artery ultrasound. I said, yeah, but give them both tests. She can have both tests because the fact that neither one's invasive, and it wouldn't have any physical effect on her whatsoever, and all she had to do is lay there. But they make the mistake. They asked her, which she had no legal power to make a decision on her own tests at that point because she had been determined previously to be totally incompetent. So they should have called me immediately and I would have okayed the test. But my mother told them no, she didn't want the test. So they admit her, and they said that they admitted her under observation, not under treatment. Now, because she was admitted under observation and not treatment, she wasn't eligible for the 21 days of Medicare would have covered her in a nursing home. But they, at the same time, they changed her prescription. Now, to me, I said, if you change the prescription, then in fact you did treat her. So I get the prescription, call my mother back to the house, get the prescription, and it has 5 medications on it. The first one was for upset stomach. Well, she's never had an upset stomach. So why in the fucking hell would I want to give her an additional medicine at that stage in the game? Then they give her a nitroglycerin patch. That was a second prescription. Now the nitroglycerin patch, she's never had heart trouble, and everybody said she had a good steady heartbeat. So I told the pharmacist, no, don't fill that one either. Then on top of that, they give her Norvasc as a blood pressure medicine. Well, this is a beta blocker, and what it causes is swelling in the feet. It causes a buildup of liquids. That's the last thing at her age she needed was a buildup of liquids. And then, of course, they give her an additional water pill to counteract the Norvasc. So there's 4 out of 5. I said, no, there's no way in hell uh, are you gonna, uh, am I gonna give her these pills? So then they give her the fifth one, which was lorazepam, which is a, a sort of a relaxing anti-anxiety pill, but it's also habit forming, and you also have to keep increasing the dosage. So they had already had her on 1 milligram every 4 hours. So what's the prescription for? Half a milligram every 8 hours. And the 1 milligram every 4 hours had literally no effect on this woman. You don't know this woman. So I go home, I find out now I have to, she had a hospital bed because she had to sleep with elevated, with her head elevated, or she'd choke on her own saliva. So I have to call up another organization to get them, because now hospice wants their hospital bed back as soon as possible. They were nice enough to leave it till another bed arrived. So then I have to arrange for another company to bring a bed in, of which Medicare is paying for it. So Medicare is paying for the hospice bed, and Medicare is paying for the new bed. Now, what sense does this make? One payer would have, if hospice, if Medicare just pays for everything, then who gives a shit whose bed it is? So now, in a little bedroom, I've got two hospital beds and about that much room for somebody to help my mother out. So I called the doctor and I said, George, she's having tremendous trouble. She's screaming and hollering all night. He said, well, increase the lorazepam. I said, well, you already did that to one pill, to 1 milligram. He said, well, bring it up to two. I said, well, then why the hell did you write me a prescription for half a milligram every 8 hours when now you want me to give her 2 milligrams every 4 hours? But that's medicine in this country. Now, no, nothing against George. George's a good doctor. He just has way too many patients to keep, to keep a track of. I guess I don't know. So then hospice comes in and takes their bed back. Now they said, now my mother at this point starts going downhill quickly. At this point, she hadn't eaten anything in like 3 days, and she had a lot of trouble taking even the slightest bit of medicine with water. So we were giving it to her with a spoonful of applesauce, and that's all she was eating the whole day. And she had a lot of trouble getting this little spoon of applesauce down. Not a whole container of it, just a teaspoon. So we go, and they come and they get their bed, and we switch her over from beds. Now hospice says that they can reevaluate anytime they want, and so I called them in, asked them to reevaluate. The nurse told me she'd be there at 11:30 on, I forget whether it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and she shows up 4 o'clock on Thursday. And even though I could have been working and making some money, I was sitting around the house for a day and a half waiting for this Nurse Cratchit to show up. The nurse shows up and tells me that without ever looking at my mother, that my mother's not eligible to go back on on hospice care. And I said, how in the fuck is that? She said, well, I read the hospital report and she's not eligible. I said, you haven't even looked at her. She's fucking 8 feet away from me in the next room. How the fuck can you make that decision without looking at her? She says, well, I'll look at her, but it's not going to make any difference. So I said, well, if it ain't going to make any difference, then get the fuck out of my house. What the Sam hell? I'm sitting around. You could have had the courtesy to call me up and say, listen, Medicare requires us to stop at the house even though we're not going to put her back on. I said I would have understood that, and you could have come, driven in the driveway, turned around, got the fuck out of here, and I wouldn't have had to sit around for a day and a half, and you wouldn't have had to go through all this shit. So she says, yeah, but Medicare. I said, listen, I'm not stupid. You don't have to be redundant. Just get the fuck out of the house. So on the way out, she says, but Medicare. I said, listen, I heard it all. Get out. So then my mother takes a worse turn, and now for 3, 4 hours of the night she's going. I mean, just as loud as unbelievable, and it's just unbearable on her and myself. So I called the doctor up and I said, listen, George, I said we got to put her on morphine because she's in just a terrible amount of pain. By this time, she hadn't eaten in like 5 days. All right. So George says, well, I can't do prescribe that. I has to be prescribed by hospice, and we'll send hospice around again. These are the same turkeys that a day and a half earlier uh, told me that they didn't even have to look at her and she wasn't going to go back on. So they send the night nurse out. So the nurse comes about 7:30, 8 o'clock. She just listens to my mother for 5 minutes, who's been wailing now for a day and a half, and says, "Yeah, we'll put her back on." But she says the day nurse has to make that decision. All right, so now my mother has to wail an entire another evening before the day nurse will put her on. So the day nurse comes and says, "Yes, we'll put her on." And the social worker came first. And excuse me. Hello, hello. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She died yesterday. Norm. Yeah. I have some incredible papers I found. I think you'd like to look at. So if you have some time later today, if you could come over. Yeah. Okay. I'm in the middle of something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you the whole story. I'm in the middle of something right here now. Okay. Okay. Thanks for calling. My cousin. So where were we? All right, so the nurse says, listen, I'm going to okay. Now, the whole time, the morphine's been in my refrigerator because when hospice shows up, they give you a little packet and it's sealed and they're telling you to keep it in the refrigerators and only they can administer stuff from the packet. Now, they've already opened the packet 5 weeks before and put her on this lorazepam, which is the anti-anxiety drug, which is, as I also said, is habit forming, and you have to give her stronger and stronger doses, and you can't take her off of it or she'll go into withdrawal symptoms. Nice stuff. But this is all under doctor's orders. Now the nurse says, "Here, we're gonna give her. I'll show you how to administer the morphine. It comes in. You just suck a little tube into a hypodermic, but it's not a real hypodermic. It's got a wide mouth on it. She says you just squirt it under the tongue, and she says I'll stay for about 10 minutes and I'll show you how how the stuff works, and it'll quiet her down, and you'll have a lot of relief." Well, 10 minutes go by, my mother's wailing away like crazy. 20 minutes, a half an hour later. So we give her an extra dose of lorazepam. Has no effect on this woman whatsoever. Then she says, well, we better call the doctor. So the doctor says, well, go from 0.25 milligrams of morphine to every 4 hours to every hour. All right, now a day before we couldn't get morphine. Now they want to quadruple the the amount of morphine she's getting, which is fine with me because she was obviously in pain. She couldn't eat, she couldn't swallow, she hadn't had anything to drink. Now we're up to 8 days without, or 8 or 9 days without any food at all, and just a teaspoon of water. So the nurse stays, and then we give her the second thing, and then that settles her down some, and then the nurse leaves. Well, a day later, my mother took a turn, I thought, for the worse, and she's gargling and gargling on her own saliva, and there's no way of getting it out. So they give her another medicine from the little packet. It says put it on her tongue and 2 drops, and it'll take care of the saliva. It had no effect on the saliva whatsoever. So I called. They said anytime you have any trouble, and this was on a Saturday, 24 hours a day, call and we'll send the nurse out right away. All right. Well, nurse Cratchit comes out at well, just a joke. That's what I call her. Comes out at um, about an hour later, right? And my mother's still gargling, and the nurse gives her the. Oh, meanwhile, the guy comes and takes the bed or delivers the bed, and he also delivers something like having the dentist office where it sucks the saliva out of you. And he told me how to use it, but the nurse has to administer it. You can't administer it. So I said to the nurse, "Well, let's try this machine." She says, "Oh no, you'll probably do more damage. It'll suck the air out of her lungs." I'm saying we ain't going to leave it in there. We're just going to suck the big gob of crap that she's gargling on now. She says, "Don't worry, I'll show you. I'll show you how to get this out." She says all you have to do is turn her on her side and move her around and it'll be good. Well, she's never been turned on her side. She's always been laying flat and sitting at an angle like this, so that that stuff sort of drains. Well, she turns her on her side. Now, get this now, at the same time, my niece and her husband are in the room with me and the nurse. And as soon as the nurse turns her on her side, I said, she died. Oh, 3 minutes before this, the nurse was saying, oh, she's got a really good, strong heartbeat. And she's got good circulation. And she's checking her feet and her pulse and everything else. And she puts her on her side. And I said, she just died. I just looked at her and knew. So, hmm. So I said, and the nurse said, "Oh no, she didn't die." I said, "Look at her, she just died." And the nurse goes and can't find a heartbeat. Her heart stopped. All right. Now, 30 seconds later, she goes like that. I said, "Oh, what?" I mean, it was the most shocking thing I'd ever seen in my life. And the nurse says, "Well, that's a just a reflex." Well, for the next 2 minutes, she does it 3 more times. I just left the room. So they're picking up the two beds on Monday.